going to talk a little bit. Okay. We are going to talk about Queen Esther today. I'm not going to talk about the whole book. Yes, I assume that you are familiar with the story, and those of you who participated just read the Megillah, the book of Esther, a couple of days ago. So, but I'm really interested in Esther herself, in the character of Esther, and we will see what we can learn about her in the time that we are going to spend together. So let me first of all share my screen. Okay, we don't need this, and we don't need this, and we don't need this. So 1 second, here we go. Here. Okay, I hope everybody can see the screen. You can see it? Okay, good, good. So, we will read here and there from the book and see what we can learn from it about Queen Esther. So first of all, how we are introduced to her in chapter 2, verses 5 to 7. We are here. Yes, there was a Jewish man in Shushan, the capital. By the way, this is one of the few books in the whole Bible where we are being called Jews. Yes, most of the Bible, we are at the very beginning, we are called Hebrews, then we are called Israelites, but only after the Babylonian exile, we are being called Jews, and Jews is really came from Judeans, yes, because it was the people from Judah who went to exile. So the term in Hebrew, the term is Yehudi, come from Yehudah, from the tribe of Judah. Somehow through going from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to English, the D got lost. And we are called Jews in English, but actually the actual name should be Judeans, yes, Yehudim. So in any case, there was a Jewish man in Shushan, the capital, and his name was Mordechai, son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who had been exiled from Jerusalem, and the captives exiled with Jechoniah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had exiled. So there was a small exile several years before the big exile, when the king Nebuchadnezzar came already to Jerusalem, took away here it's called Jechoniah, in the book of Kings he's called King Jehoiachin. That king captured and took him to Babylon with some Judeans, but that was a small exile. Couple of years later came the rebellion, and then came the destruction of Jerusalem and the big Babylonian exile. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was beautiful and of good presence. And when her father and her mother died, Mordechai adopted her as a daughter. So Mordechai is her uncle. Now, what is important to realize from the beginning, notice first of all the name of Mordechai. Yes, he is Mordechai, the son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, which, if you see, all three names of his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather are all Hebrew names. But his name is Mordechai, and Mordechai is not Hebrew name. Mordechai is a name that people who tried to assimilate took for themselves, because Mordechai comes from the name of the god Marduk. So Mordechai is today Mordechai is considered the Hebrew name because it was in the book of Esther. But in biblical times, the name Mordechai was after the god Marduk. That means Mordechai was an assimilated Jew who tried to assimilate within the society. And his daughter and his niece, yes, her Hebrew name is Hadassah, but she actually had a different name to use, and that's the name Esther, and Esther comes from from the goddess Ashtar. So she was also an assimilated Jew. Yes, both Mordechai and his niece were assimilated. It's very typical today. It's quite common here in America. When there is a Jewish family, a child is born, we give the child a Hebrew name for the child's bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, wedding and funeral. But then we give them an English name so they will be able easier to mingle within society. This is exactly what happened with Mordechai. Yes, we are following in their footsteps here in the United States. So that's the background of Esther. Of Esther, it is not clear if she actually was born already in the diaspora in Shushan, or that she was born in Judah. Her parents died, and her uncle adopted her, and then they were exiled. But that is not so completely clear. Okay, so then we have the story of the king Ahasuerus, who sent away his rebellious wife Vashti, and now he is creating a sort of a contest among all the young women of Persia to come and spend the night with him so he can choose a new queen. Okay, and so Esther is at the right age. So here we read in chapter 2, verses 8 to 11. So it came to pass, when the king's command and his decree were heard, and when many girls were gathered together in Shushan, the capital, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also to the king's palace, to the custody of Haggai, guardian of the women. And the girl pleased him, and she won his favor. And he quickly gave her ointment and her appointed portions, and 7 maids chosen to be given to her from the king's palace. And he advanced her and her maids to the best place in the harem. Esther has not disclosed or declared her people nor her country, for Mordechai has charged her that she should not tell. And Mordechai walked every day before the court of the harem to know how Esther was and what was done to her. So very important things that come here. Yes, the girls are being collected from all over the country, and Esther is one of them. They all are being brought to the custody of Haggai. If you read the Hebrew, Haggai was a eunuch, yes, and all the men who worked in the harem were eunuchs, so there was no chance for any kind of any hanky-panky on the side, yes. And he was the custodian, and he had to take care of the different contestants. And he liked Esther, but notice what is really important here. There are 2 things. First of all, Esther was brought to the king's palace. This is important to realize that Esther is presented as somebody who is extremely passive. She's presented as somebody who is extremely passive. So it's not that she joined the contest. Yes, she was brought. She is taken, and the Hebrew is much more clear even than the English. Yes, and as we'll see later, she does not ask for anything. You know, all the girls are getting all the kind of stuff to pamper themselves in order to be ready to the visit with the king. And they can ask for whatever they want, what kind of cosmetic they need, and what kind of shampoo and stuff like that. She does not ask for anything. And she is also extremely obedient, as we can see in verse 10. Yes, she does not disclose that she is Jewish. Mordechai have told her not to tell that she's Jewish, so nobody knows. She has a Persian name, yes, Esther from Ashtar, and she does not say anything that will identify as belonging to the Jewish people. Yes, and there is nothing in her behavior. All throughout the book, there's nothing in her behavior that that we will identify, if you want, as a Jewish behavior. You will not find any of that throughout the text. Okay, and then we read, to add to what I just said. Yes, we read that here in chapter 2, verses 15 and 16. When the turn of Esther, the daughter of Michael, the uncle of Mordechai, who had adopted her as his daughter, came to go to the king, she asked for nothing but what Haggai, the king eunuch, the keeper of the women, advised. And Esther found favor in the sight of all those who looked at her. And eventually she was taken to the king Ahasuerus, to his royal palace. In the 10th month, the 10th month is the month of Tevet. That was, if you count from Nisan, the month of Passover, which used to be considered the first month. Then you come to the month of Tevet as the 10th month, in the 7th year of his reign. Okay, but again, notice she asked for nothing but whatever Haggai, the king eunuch, the keeper of the women, advised or gave her. Esther is totally passive. Yes, a typical woman, if you want, in the biblical society. Women in biblical society were unfortunately considered the property of the man. Yes, a man acquires a woman. Yes, the Bible, in most cases, the Bible does not say the man marries a woman, but a man acquires or takes a woman as a wife. You never read in the Bible that a woman married a man. Women don't marry a man. Women only get married to men. Yes, so women are sort of second class citizens, and women are supposed to be obedient to their husbands, and are supposed to be not to ask for anything, not to expect for anything. Their role in life is to make their fathers and later on their husbands happy. That's the main role in life, and Esther fits right in there. Yes, and if you read some feminist literature, or you read literature, modern literature, that try to talk about the impact of that on many women in societies where they are considered property of their husbands, you realize that these women become, in many cases, they become really behave like property. That means they don't express their own feelings, they don't express their own desires, they don't try to make anything of themselves, because the whole identity depends on their master. Yes, in the extreme cases, we see it, for example, that there are women who are being actually abused by their husbands. Nevertheless, they don't leave them, because somehow when their husband abuses them, he's also paying attention to them, and they thrive on the little bit of attention. This is a tragic thing, but it happens quite a lot. So I'm not saying that Esther was abused, but what I'm saying is Esther is the prototype of a woman who does not really have a personality of her own, a desire of her own, interest of her own, or anything like this. What she knows is that she's supposed to follow whatever she's being instructed to do. She's taken to the palace. She's taking whatever Haggai is giving her as cosmetics. Yes, and she's totally passive in her life and in her behavior. I just want to remind you, at any time, if you have a question, of course, don't hesitate. Wave your hand, or if I cannot see you, just shout, and you can ask me. But otherwise, we'll just continue. Okay. So then the story moves on, and we come to the point. Where we've discovered that there is a competition between Haman and Mordechai on a position in the king's court. Yes, many traditional interpreters are looking at the book of Esther as a book about anti-Semitism and a book about and so forth. But actually, if you read it carefully, what is behind all of it is a competition between Haman and Mordechai. They are both vying to find a better position within the king's court. And at the moment, Haman is being the one who is being elevated. And because Mordechai refuses to bow to him, again, this is not because of religious reasons that he does not want to bow to Haman, but because Haman is his competitor. Mordechai does not like him, and Mordechai is trying to compete with him on a high position. That Haman decides somehow, yes, and the book of Esther is a story; it's not history. Yes, so he goes to the extreme that he decides, how is he going to get rid of Mordechai? By getting rid of all the Jews. Yes, because he knows Mordechai, he knows that he is a Jew. He doesn't know that Esther is Jewish. So he decides to get rid of all the Jews, and he gets the king to give him the signet so he can write a declaration that allows on the 14th of Adar, or the 15th of Adar, for everybody to kill the Jews and to take the property. Yes, the Jews become all over the country or all over the empire. The Jews can be killed. There is a permission to kill them. And Mordechai, of course, hears about that decree, and he has no way to get to the king and to try to change it. So he needs Esther's help. He needs Esther's help in order to somehow to do something about it. So he comes. He's dressed in sackcloth because he's like mourning about what happened. And he's trying to send a message to Esther that she needs to do something about it. And you see part of her passivity. Esther has no idea. She never heard of it. She did not know even about this decree on the Jews. There was no CNN at that time or anything like this, no internet. She had no idea what's going on. She is in the palace getting ready to be called to the king, and therefore she is completely oblivious to the tragedy that is going to happen to the Jews. So Mordechai is sending again and again messengers to her that she must do something. And she says, and that she should go to the king and try to change his mind. And then the last thing that Mordechai can say to her in trying to convince her, he says to her, that's in chapter 4, verses 13 and 14. Then Mordechai commanded to answer Esther, think not yourself that in the king's palace you shall escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, then shall relief and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house shall be destroyed, and who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Basically, Mordechai is saying to Esther, somehow God is going to save us Jews. But you have to realize that probably there is a reason behind the fact that you were chosen to become the queen. Yes, you are beautiful and you are sexy and everything like this, and that seems to be the reason why King Ahasuerus chose you. But maybe you should realize that there was here a divine intervention that led to the fact that you will become the queen. So at a time like this, when the Jews need to be saved, you are in a position that you can do something. Yes? That is an extremely important message that he is sending here. Notice, by the way, God is not mentioned. God is not mentioned even once in the whole book of Esther. So even here, when he is saying there, it suggests that God was behind it, although God himself is not mentioned in the whole thing, in the whole story, in the whole book, which makes it a little bit surprising. Why did the rabbis choose the book of Esther to be even included in the canon, in the Bible? Why is it part of the Bible if it does not mention God even once? But they decided that it was important enough to have the book as part of the canon. So apparently that message got to her, and that made her to think and maybe to realize, wow, I didn't think about it. But this is actually there is a real problem here, and I am the only one who can do something in order to save the Jews. So here is something that, and this is very unusual for Esther, as I said, because as a passive person, she was not used to think in that way of responsibility or about community or anything like this. She had her limited small home, small life, yes, where it was important to make Mordechai happy, and later on it is important to make Ahasuerus happy. Who thinks about the whole community, about the Jewish people and stuff like this? That's big. That's not something that she is used to think about. Okay? But, and then here is her response. Yes, she tells Mordechai, Esther bade them return to Mordechai with the answer, go gather together all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my girls will fast likewise, and so will I go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Okay, so she decided that she will do something. She needs 3 days. She says that she's going to fast, but I'm quite sure that while she was fasting, she was also contemplating what she's going to do, trying to think how she is going to convince the king, especially that she said to Mordechai before that it's very dangerous to come to the king unless the king invites you. Because if you come to the king and the king is not happy that you came, the king has a scepter, yes, the king's rod, if you want. If he holds it up, then you're okay, you can come in. But if he holds it down, then you're being put to death. Yes, again, this is all part of the story. Yes, so Esther knows that she is taking her life. She's taking a real risk by going to the king. So she's probably contemplating what to do. But for our discussion, what is really important is that Esther is telling Mordechai what to do. In verse 17 here, let me get there. Oh, yeah. Yes. So Mordechai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. You see, we have a switch in the role. Before it was Mordechai who was commanding Esther. He commanded her not to tell that she is Jewish, so he did not say that she is Jewish. he commanded her to go to participate in the contest, and she participated. Here, she is now the one who makes the commandments, and Mordechai is the one who is following her commandments. So we have a total switch in the role. Esther is asserting herself, and Mordechai is abiding by her instruction, and he follows her instruction. Okay? So, after 3 days, probably in these 3 days, she also prepared herself to be as beautiful as possible. Yes, she goes to the king, and we read, and it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put her royal dress and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, opposite the king's palace, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal palace opposite the gate to the house, so we can see anybody who comes in. And it was when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand, so Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther, and what is your request? It shall be given to you, even to half of the kingdom." And Esther answered, "If it seems good to the king, let the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I have prepared for him." We don't know yet what is Esther's plan, and if she has a full plan, but she knows one thing that is very important. She needs to have the king alone, not with all his advisors, because one thing that if you read the book carefully, you discover that the king is really a caricature of a king. The king is extremely stupid. This is the only way that I can say that the king is stupid. Yes, he is a partying king. He has an empire of 127 nations, but all that he does is party. One party lasted 180 days. Yes, he is totally incapable of making decisions on his own. He follows advice of others. Without mentioning names, we have some politicians in recent history in the United States in the last 20 years that were like that also. Yes, and it's very important for her to have him alone. Maybe then she can turn things around, but not when he's surrounded by all these advisors and so forth. So all that she's asking, yes, the king is offering half the kingdom. Yes, he is very generous. He's very taken by her beauty and everything. And she just said, "I would like you and Haman to come to a small party that I'm going to have." And of course, the king agrees. Okay. It is not really important, but I want you just to notice that there is that the author entered a lot of sexual connotations into the story. So, for example, the king raised his scepter, and Esther draw near, and she touches the tip of the scepter. Yes. I'm leaving it for you to understand what is the sexual connotation that applies, that the author is applying here. Okay, so they come to the party, and they drink a lot and eat a lot, and then the king asks her, "Okay, so what is your wish?" And for some reason, she does not. Maybe she did not yet have the plan. Maybe they were not drunk enough or anything like this, because all that she says is, "I would like you, the two of you, to come back tomorrow for another party." Okay, so they go. So they leave her, and they come back the next night or the next evening to a second party. And then the king, again, after they ate and drank, the king is asking her, the king is asking her what she wants. Okay, and here is what transpired. This is chapter 7, verses 1 to 4. So the king and Haman came to feast with Esther the queen. And the king said again to Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted you. And what's your request? And it shall be fulfilled, even to the half of the kingdom." Then Esther the queen answered and said, "If I found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, and I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to be annihilated. But if we had been sold as male and female slave, I would have kept my silence, since the affliction would not have equaled the king's damage." So basically, at this point, Esther says to him, "I and my people are going to be killed. And I want to tell you, king, by the way, if we have just been going to be sold as slaves, I would have not bothered you. But this is really serious. There is a real mortal danger for me and my people." Notice she does not say that she is a Jew. She does not say, I and my people, the Jewish people. She does not mention being Jewish. All that she mentioned, "and my people," yes, which does not give really enough information to the king, but the king is too dumb to ask that kind of a question. Okay, so here is how the king responds. And King Ahasuerus answered and said to Esther, the queen, "Who is he and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so?" If you read carefully the story, you realize that the decree to kill all the Jews was written in the name of the king, because the king gave his signet to Haman, and Haman wrote it as if the king made the decree, and probably this dumb king did not even know about the decree and about the fact that the Jews are going to be killed. It never came to his info, he never knew about it. So he wants to know who is trying to do this to you and to your people. And then Esther is pointing to Haman, the adversary, the enemy is the wicked Haman. And Haman is moving back. He's afraid because of the king. And what happened? And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went to the palace garden. And Haman stood up to beg Esther the queen for his life, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. So the king leaves the room. He's so angry that he leaves the room. So it's not so clear. Why would the king leave the room? And I think that the only good answer is that King Ahasuerus is incapable of making any decisions on his own. He needs an advisor to help him to make a decision. Now, in the room is only Esther and Haman and himself. Haman used to be his advisor, but now Haman is a guilty guy, so he cannot ask Haman, "What shall I do with you?" So the king leaves the room in order to find somebody else to ask, "Hey, what shall I do?" Yes, that in my opinion, that is the reason why the king left. Yes, other people say that he was too drunk, that he had to go to the bathroom, all sorts of other reasons. But I really think that the king needed to have somebody to help him to decide what to do with Haman, now that Esther identified Haman as the wicked one. Yes, and therefore we see that when the kings come back, yes, Haman meanwhile is begging Esther to do something to save his life. And you have to remember, although the book of Esther was written as if it happened in the Persian Empire, actually some of the customs that are being described in the book are much more Hellenistic. So the book was written probably much later, when Judah was already under the Greek. Yes, after Alexander the Great conquered Judah. So one of the things that we know from Greek tradition is when people have a party, they are not sitting. They are lying on some kind of sofas, yes, lying like this, yes, leaning on one arm and eating with the other hand, yes. So Esther too is lying on some sort of a sofa or something like this, and the result is that here, let's see what happened. Chapter 7, verses 8 to 10. Then the king returned from the palace garden to the place of the wine drinking, and Haman was falling upon the couch where Esther was. So Haman is sort of over Esther, begging her, yes, begging her, please do something, please do something. But the king thinks that he's trying to rape her or something like that. So the king, so then said the king, will he also force the queen with me present in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Haman he realizes that he's in deep trouble. But now notice, the king is not alone. And Harbonah, one of the eunuchs, said before the king. So the king brought an advisor with him back to the room. Before there was nobody else. But now he brings somebody to help him to decide what to do with Haman, and he brings Harbonah. And he said to the king, behold, there is a gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman has made for Mordechai, who had spoken good for the king. Stand in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordechai. Then the king's wrath pacified. So as far as the king is concerned, Haman is out of the picture, so there is nothing to worry about. Okay, there is nothing to worry about. So, however, the decree that the king made is still enforced, and still in power, because the people all over the nation, they are not aware that Haman is the one who wrote the decree. They are not aware that Haman now is dead, so maybe the decree is not in power. So as far as they are concerned, the problem of the Jews is still there. It's only the dumb king that he thinks that by killing Haman, then everything is now hunky-dory. He does not have to worry about anything. So Esther and Mordechai together, so once Haman is being executed, Mordechai is elevated to the position that he was in, and both he and Esther have to come again to the king and ask the king to do something about the decree. Yes, the king was completely forgot about the whole issue of the decree. All that he cared is Haman was evil. Haman was trying to rape Esther right in front of him. He got rid of him. Everything is fine. So the king has no idea what to do, and he says to them, well, we have a problem, because it will look bad if I, the king, now issue another decree that changes a former decree. People will think that I'm stupid. Yes, it's against it's not for the honor of the king to go back on decree that he has made. And therefore, you have to come up with a different solution. You have to come up with a different solution, do not change the decree that I gave, that it's okay to kill the Jews and to take their property. Come up with a different solution in order to solve your problem. He basically passes it to them and tells them, you can do whatever you want. And he gives them again, like he did with Haman, he gives them his signet so they can decide what they want, what can be done. And here we come to a great dilemma. What can Esther and Mordechai do? They are not allowed to issue a decree in the name of the king that cancels a former decree. That is the only thing that they are not allowed to do. So they have a real problem how to solve the problem and save the Jews. Yes, and when I teach it in a course, I always stop at this point and ask my students, well, what do you think they could have done? How could they have stopped the decree? What can they do? And very few students can come up with a good suggestion. Is there anybody here who can think about what would you have done? How would you have solved the problem and the danger of the Jews without negating the original decree that was already published in the name of the king? Any thoughts on that? Okay, this is a tough question. I'm not suggesting that there is a good answer. Yes, but it's important to realize that that the Jews did not have a lot of options, because what Esther and Mordechai came up with, they came up with another decree that said that one day before the date that the Jews could be slaughtered and killed, one day before that, the decree gives the Jews permission to do what we call today a preemptive strike. That means to go and kill anyone who was planning to go and kill them the next day. Okay, so there is a permission to the Jews to take arms and to go and kill the potential enemies, the potential people who are going to slaughter them the next day, to go and kill them. Yes, as I said, what we call today preemptive strike. And that's what they do. So they one day before the decree, the other decree comes into power, the Jews go and kill their enemies all over the empire, and because there were so many of their enemies in Shushan, they asked for an extra day and so forth. Yes, the story gets a little bit convoluted as far as the dates are concerned, but basically that's the idea. And that's how the Jews were saved. So, you know, when we study the book of Esther, usually we skip on that part. Yes, when we teach kids about the story and so forth, we usually skip that part because it doesn't feel good that the Jews went and slaughtered everybody who was a potential enemy of them in order to avoid being slaughtered. Although it is morally justice, it sounds like an immoral way how to solve the problem. Okay, so but that's the only thing that they could come up with, and the only suggestion that they could come up with in order to try to solve the problem. Okay, so they go and they kill their enemies, and the text even says that although in biblical times, there was no official way to convert to Judaism. That's something that the rabbis invented hundreds of years later, the idea of conversion. The text says that many people were so afraid of the Jews that they converted to Judaism. Yes, that's how the text tells us, although it does not say how they did it. Okay, so the Jews were saved. Mordechai is elevated now to the place where Haman used to be before. More than that, the king gave Esther Haman's family was also destroyed. His sons were also hanged, and the king gave Esther Haman's palace. And Esther has nothing to do with the palace, so she gives it to Mordechai. Okay, and then we come to the end of the book, and what do we read? And Mordechai went out from the presence of the king in royal clothes of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and a purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had a light and gladness and joy and honor. That's the Hebrew is ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר. Yes, and this is actually a line that made itself into the Havdalah ritual. For those of you who do a Havdalah, that line from the book of Esther is being recited when we do the Havdalah at the end of the Shabbat. Okay, so the king became elevated Mordechai, yes, and Mordechai and the people of Shushan are partying the big celebration. And the end of the book, and the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the island of the sea, and all the acts of his power and his might, and the declaration of the greatest of Mordechai, to which the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordechai was next to King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted by the multitudes of his brother, seeking the good of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. So there is one thing that is amazing. What we read before about the party, yes, Mordechai is going and he's having a big party in Shushan with all the Jews. And then the king elevates Mordechai, and all the story of Mordechai. You want to read more about Mordechai the Great? Go to the Chronicles of the kings of Persia. Who is missing? Somebody is missing in all this. And that is Esther. Esther is totally missing. And the question is, what's going on? How come she is not mentioned? And the simple answer would be that I don't know. Yes, I simply don't know. But I actually think that what happened to Esther is a real tragedy. Remember that we started with the fact that Esther was a passive person who was totally passive, totally not active, not trying to do anything for herself, not trying to understand the world or anything like this. She was limited into the small world where she was where she was put in, and her main concern was to make her uncle happy, and then to make Ahasuerus happy. That was the main thing. Yes. All of a sudden, she was thrown into a situation that was really against the character that she developed for so many years. So, to her credit, we have to say that she rose to the occasion, and she was able to take action, to become actually active, to become actually innovative in her way how she did it. She did not follow Mordechai's instructions. She created her own scheme how to save the Jews. But that was for her getting out of her, how do you call it, area of comfort, out of her comfort zone. So my expectations are that as soon as this was over, she gave the palace of Haman to Mordechai. She herself did not participate in all the celebrations and everything. She went back to the harem, and she's sitting there back in the harem with her maids, waiting for whenever the king will call her. Yes, she goes back, if you want, into her former role of passive and waiting for the king in order to please the king. So in some way, I believe that Esther as a character, yes, Esther is a hero as far as a story of the Jewish people is concerned. Although I don't believe that it's history, I think it's just a story, but she is a hero. But if you look at her just from her personal point of view, I think she's a very, very tragic character, because although she emerged for a second, and then she sunk back to her old self, which is a nothing. Yes, and I don't know how many you remember the book, and there was also a play called Flower to Algernon. Yes, about experiment that was made to enhance the intelligence of people who suffer from lack of intelligence, if you want. And there is a guy that they experiment first with the mouse, and the mouse become extremely intelligent, and they experiment with the guy, and he for a short time becomes a genius. Yes, great IQ, very personality, everything. He even falls in love with one of the doctors who is working with him, but the medicine worked only for a short time, and then he goes back to his old self, or somebody with some serious mental limitations. Yes, a very, very tragic ending to that story. And Esther is very much the same way. Yes. So so I feel for her. I feel for her, and I feel sad for her, and for the fact that she was not able to sustain this new energy and everything that she developed before. So this covers basically what I was going to talk to you about Esther. Is there any question or comments that you would like to make before we go to sleep?
I'm on my cell phone, so it may be a little difficult, but
that's okay.
Thank you, because you really brought the story of Esther to life. You made it so realistic and so easy to follow, and gave it a lot of depth and relevance, and something that in all my years, and I'm not a young guy, I never heard told that way. So just for myself, but also on behalf of the congregation, I just want to thank you so much for doing that. Yeah. It's a gift that you have, and I thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yes, Susan.
Okay. I kind of like the one I learned when I was little better.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yes. I shattered the image.
You did, you
Yes,
did.
yes.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
brought up conservative and I wasn't told any of that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
But
Yes,
there was one statement you made that I can't quite totally agree with. And
Yep.
that is that you see Esther as tragic in that she shined for the moment and then returned to her reclusive, submissive self.
Right.
But and that could be seen as a tragedy. But if that is who she really was, and she's true to herself, then is being true to yourself and just being yourself a tragedy?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm. She probably came back to what she used to be and what she was comfortable with. Yes, as an outsider, admiring her ability to solve the problem and to take the chances and to I admire that, and I feel that this is I don't know, a loss to the world or something.
Loss.
Yes, a loss to society, that somebody like this cannot sustain it and maybe do some other great things, but she goes back to her old self. That's why I use that term. Anyone else?
Well,
Yes.
I think women have been looked at as chattel down through the ages until recently.
Correct.
And so her story about, or the story of the women as being looked at as chattel, that's just a long historical story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's no question about that. Yes. And in some ways, if you listened a little bit to some of the grilling of the candidate for the Supreme Court, you could hear even today that kind of attitude and that kind of put down
Also,
for her on her partly because she's black and partly because she's a woman.
yes.
These Congress members would have not dared, or senators would have not dared to speak like this if it was a male candidate. So unfortunately, some of this attitude is still even, you can see it even today. Absolutely.
Well, in some religions, the women have no voice.
That's right. That's right. And Judaism, yes, the reform and the conservative movements have moved away from this. But if you look at Orthodoxy, you still have that problem. Yes, women
Yes.
cannot be rabbis. Women should be at home, and so forth. That attitude still exists, and of course, it exists in many other societies still, and that is seriously still a serious problem.
Can you take down the share so that we see everybody?
Yes, of course. Hold on one second. Stop share. You're right. Okay.
You're fast.
Yes, Lynn.
Thank you.
Lynn Stadner. No, you are muted. Unmute.
Oh, take it.
Still muted.
Now you're okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm David. This is just.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you.
giving you a
It
hard
was very
time.
interesting.
Thank you.
It was very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
If it's standard.
Okay, folks, I think we'll stop here. I wish you all a good night. And maybe we get together another time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
We
much.
look forward to that.